I do worry sometimes that I give the impression that I start a lot of projects on this vlog and don't necessarily follow them through. Anyone who knows me knows that I do always finish these things. They just sometimes take a long time, not least the aspiration to create the world's biggest template. There is a project that's happening later this year. All will become clear soon, but I needed to call in the big guns, the king of templates, Mr. Jay Jackson.
Hello, hello.
How are we doing? So this is going to be like a series of one called Composers in Cabs Getting Curry. We've had a really busy day today.
Yeah.
I was very disappointed at first because I lost my original attempts at the template, but actually when we whiteboarded it, it became clear that we really needed to start from scratch anyway. It's really important to kind of reiterate that the art of media composition, particularly multi-cue, so if you're not doing a single advert or a short form thing, if you're doing stuff with multiple cues, multiple episodes, multiple reels, templates are fundamental to the art of composition. But I think it's also going to be really helpful for people to hear that is reflected also in you, not only as a tracking engineer but also as a mix engineer within multi-cue, multi-file kind of format.
Absolutely. I have a very strict way of working, which is to start with my template, which has a certain number of stems, reverbs, effects in it, and then import the audio, get started. Throughout the project, that template gets bigger and bigger and bigger, so that when I'm working on the 25th cue, all my sounds are there in a template, and I can just import it, and I'm just using the template like a Dixie desk.
But to take it back even further, you know, when you're working on a 7 or 8 reel movie, you're talking about, you know, how many cues? You know, up to 100?
Potentially, yeah. I was on a project we were doing choir overdubs. There was 8M 160. It was like,
wow. Imagine working on an album with 160 different like start points, and if you don't have a template, if you can't import what you've learned from the last cue, you just never will get to the finish line.
No,
we're thinking about that, even like saving 2 minutes on something.
If I could save 1 second per minute by doing a button push somewhere, then that means I can spend, at the course of the day, I can spend an extra hour mixing the music.
Yeah. Right, so I haven't set up any lav mics or anything like this because this is like proper work day, isn't it? We're doing work. So we just think that we'll switch the cameras on and off as we do kind of interesting stuff.
It's going to be for a big project, and people are going to use it differently, so we have to kind of try and think of as many permutations as we can, but with our years of learning in it, so absolutely. That people, it might take some explanation or relearning from people if somebody else is going to pick up this template, but it'll make sense.
I think it should go in stanza order as you would get on a stave.
That is often the way to think about it, but then you have strings at the bottom, which is that kind of cool because it's you know, you've got that woodwinds. I don't know. I think you're probably right because it makes sense.
Well, also, but it's the way it organises itself automatically onto the page. Onto the page.
Yeah, no, it should be obvious if you make mistakes. It's essentially is the way I think about it. Absolutely, it should be numerical to a certain degree.
So I've got a few like big scores next door, and also some orchestration books, so we can consult that for does the bassoon go above the cor anglais? I think I know the answer to that. But my hope is that we stem the strings, so we have longs, shorts, pizzico col legno, and effects and trems. So that's 4 stems for the strings, and then for the rest of the instruments, kind of longs and shorts. And then I think we've got to talk about percussion. I think that maybe I could take your advice on that, on what you would prefer. Mixed stem.
Mixed stem. It depends again on the who you're delivering it to, but you normally high and low percussion might be, and then tuned. So kind of like your tippy tappy kind of stuff, your big booms, and then your xylophones and microphones, that kind of thing. It would be probably. So
we'll use the Logic stacks. The stacks will be the stems as well, I guess. I've got to get my head back into the Logic stacks thing. And then each stem needs its own reverb. Yeah,
the thing is, I'm going to talk to you about having 2 reverbs per stem for double jugging.
Okay.
But
bearing in mind we're only allowed to use the Logic.
Yeah, even so, still, in that case, that for me makes it even more imperative to have that kind of thing. So you're using 2 different types of reverb to help blend it. We've discussed reverb.
Okay, right.
So the cows come home. But if we're going to use this as a mixed template as well, then I think it's important to have those things, and then another effects channel that you can use however you like.
Okay.
I struggle sometimes thinking that actually, am I becoming a little bit one-dimensional with my template. But no, I'm not, because it's not about that. It's giving you things you know work.
Yeah.
And then you can tweak it immediately, because you're saving yourself so much time by having the template to start with.
Absolutely.
You can spend the time by being creative within that template.
We've worked out basically the distribution of instruments, the order that they work
Yeah,
in.
so you've got the winds, and then in the kind of almost the seating arrangement, flutes, and they go high to low. All these go high to low. So oboe would be
piccolo,
oboe,
above
core.
flutes,
yeah,
all the
and
different
oboe
flutes.
core, clarinet and bass clarinet, bassoon, contrabassoon, etc. Then brass, horns at the top, trumpets working their way down, high to low essentially. Harp, percussion, tune percussion, underneath percussion, strings. This is then, it's in kind of composer world, and then composer stroke mix world.
So this is strings pre-mix. So this is what these are the stems that I would prepare if you were mixing.
Yeah.
So these are, and they're separate from the playback stems. So we've got winds long, winds short, brass long, brass short, harp, timps, perk low, perk high, tuned percussion, and then strings long, strings short, pits and carlegno, FX trems and harmonics. The reason we split these mainly up is because the different use of reverb is particularly important with the stuff that you've recorded at Air. Yeah. And then the reasons for this slightly more detailed splitting up of the strings is strings longs and strings short, as always, will use different amounts of reverb. Just to remind you, the reason for this is when they play short, it reverberates the room. When they play longs, they never stop dead, because it's literally like rubbing so basically the amount of release trigger that you get on a long is always going to be less than that on a short, so you always put more reverbs on the longs than the shorts. Pits and carlegno is you put even less reverb on, but also often you'll just not bother record those for sessions, because the pits and carlegnos, well, they don't particularly enjoy playing carlegnos.
No, also it depends on how much time you've got as well, let's be honest, as well.
Often the samples will work better. And then FX trems and harms, these are often kind of divisi parts. I may put a harmonic 2 octaves above the longs, and for me the samples often are fine for that, and I don't want to basically split up maybe a section of only 8 players so that 4 of them are playing a cheeky little harmonic shimmer, which works perfectly well with the sample. So that's one of the reasons why, again, it takes a different kind of reverb amount, but also because in the long run we need to separate these, because often we'll be blending the longs and shorts with the real, but these will actually be 100% sample.
Absolutely, yeah, right.
Okay, so then there's playback stems, which are different, and basically I divide those up by the likely different sessions that you'll do. So basically you can mute off the session that you're working on down. You'll often start, say for example, with a string session. It's good to hear them in the context of what the winds will be doing as it overdubs. So exactly, winds, brass, harp, perk, strings, and then a full mix.
Useful. Just that's just useful. Just if someone ever says, "Oh, what does the demo sound like?" You go, "Well, there's the demo, right there."
There's the demo, exactly. I would say 75% of scores tend to be mixed by the composers.
Yeah.
And how we use these different elements to create a final mix.
We want the point of this template is to be all purpose.
So there are two things that we would do with this. One is we would track lay it and put it into Pro Tools for a pro record and mix, same for both of them. Or we would keep them in Logic if we're mixing, and what I would do is I would use these stems as what I would mix and balance.
Use as faders essentially.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And then these would be the final delivery stems.
Yeah. Which you can either do, depending on what they want. You could either you do all those with that, or you just do that depending on what they ask for. For those of you who are writing library tracks or whatever, then they'll want delivery of these things. So it's good to have the template to have this
Absolutely. Now the main thing here is we have effect sends for reverbs, and back in the day reverbs used to be very kind of CPU costly and that kind of stuff, but it's less of a concern
because
these days.
Well, I mean the samples will take up more processing than a reverb,
exactly.
So it's fine.
But I think there's just an interesting debate to be had about distribution of reverb, where it occurs in the chain. For example, if I was to give you some playback stems, would you like them with the reverbs on?
Yes, I would.
Yes.
So therefore they should go, because if you were delivering for mixed, then you would.
However, for stems premix, you wouldn't like.
No.
Exactly.
No.
So, for me, it suggests that we should have the raw instruments going into the premix.
Yeah.
The reverb is applied at the end of that signal path.
Absolutely right.
Into this one. My vibe is, and obviously there's the new Mac Pros that we may or may not be able to get our hands on. Always, whenever creating one of these, is create it for the best possible system.
Of course.
And then we can put it on a laptop and go, well, how do we pair that back?
Yeah.
And I think that we should leave that till the last possible moment, so we just get everything in.
Oh, of course.
Because also there's obviously the mic positions is a whole new thing to talk about as well.
Yeah.
Something that I think is hugely important is the way in which these things are titled, because you perform something called
import session data.
Import session data.
Yeah.
So we've also got to talk about, again, this is one of those things that's a nightmare to change further down the line. Talk about the protocol in which we will be numbering tracks. So for me, for example, woodwinds would be 100, brass would be 200, and therefore woodwind piccolo would be 101. So thinking about that kind of stuff at this stage as well.
Also, you've got to we also then need to factor in the fact that they'd also record that at the record station. They'd probably want to use those numbers as well. So it's a kind of like, you have to. We'll have a boring conversation about numbering, but it's very important because it's that. But then also you've got to work out. Okay, so if this is our reverb send for that. So then that's going to be. Do we send that off number 1 and that off number 2, or do we send that off number 1 and number 11? It's like is this like horns, trumpets, trombones, tuba.
It's interesting because horns are kind of slightly outside the brass.
Yeah, some people call them winds.
They tend to turn up with suits, and the trumpeters turn up with leather jackets and crash helmets.
We should have 2 reverbs, and what we can do, so we can have verb 1.
So this is per
delivery stem.
Okay.
Because these are going to be dry, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to use them to send to these. So
and therefore we can use this basically different send amounts into the same reverb.
So these go from, these go from here to there. Okay. We'll do a structure diagram in a minute. This is our idea. We'll do a nice structure diagram in a minute to help set it up, and that'll help us make the decisions. So these reverbs can either be used for double jugging.
Linked below is the origin of that term.
Double jug.
But briefly touch on why 2 reverbs.
2 reverbs. It's something that I've discovered works really well. You have 2 similar-ish reverbs, similar length reverbs, and they just help to make it sound less like a reverb and more like a space and more real, I think, so 2 reverbs. I tend to use 1 convolution reverb and 1 algorithmic reverb. And then we might have an effects send as well, and those effects could be effects versus or verb 3. User dependent, I think. That's kind of user decided.
That's a good idea. So you might want to do delays.
We might want to say, but if it's not the style for that, then you might want to have a long reverb that is a kind of like a kind of cool
super hyped.
Super hyped. Yeah. And then of course we have our stereo mix, and we can decide about how far we want to go with this, because this is all completely dependent of program dependent, like what settings you have the compressor at, what EQ. There.
Well, my preference would be to have the full dry without that, and then what I would refer to as the OST.
Right.
The kind of
the master.
I know someone like Harry always just for presentation, people listening on shit speakers.
Yeah.
So this is a reference that's very important to be just not dabbled with, but actually a mix that is what you present to your client, and potentially you call your original soundtrack, stuff. So that basically they are listening in Soho House, that you iron out the dynamics a little bit and pump things and hype things a bit more. I tell you, there's just looking at this and just thinking about something I did last week. Which you were just listening to actually, is a common issue with composers is stacking, and then you suddenly run out of headroom.
Yeah.
And by this point, you may have automated all sorts of stuff and just lowering bus sends and all that kind of stuff. So I wonder if there's a trim stage we can put in somehow.
Don't worry, that's included in my.
That's included in the deal.
In my deal, in the Pro Tools thing, I have that set up because I constantly have that issue where you're asked to turn things up, and it's like, okay, fine, now it's obviously too loud, and you have to, it's not, I've learned, I know roughly where this should be, but I still get caught out, so I have a trim stage, because particularly when you make these won't clip, but the full will, because these are summed together, which then obviously makes it louder. So trim stage. So that'll be somewhere in between here and here.
Okay, one final thing is just thinking again for scalability is, yes, this is a purely orchestral project that we're working on. However, in the real world, I will want to record that piano.
Yeah.
And maybe a vocal and stuff, and to not have
The routing for that.
for that, I think, and to expect people to go, okay, what has Jake done?
And copy it without.
And also it not breaking the numbering system, the colouring system, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think it's like thinking about can certainly give maybe 2 or 3 additional stems.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we want
Which
1,
could
2,
be any
3,
number
4,
of tracks.
5, 6. So I think we probably make it up to 10 or something. You know what I mean? And then you just can
use a stem 1, 2, whatever.
Yeah.
I thought this whiteboarding process was a bit indulgent, but we've ironed out. We would have had to start again 3 times had we not done this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get myself up to Scotland first.
No problem. Thank you so much. Cheers, pal.
You want to come back in or?
We'll come back in 20.
Thanks,
I'll
mate.
keep this on.
Right, nice.
Cheers, pal. Thank you.
Curry ordered. Nice.
Good curry ordered. So just a little drinky whilst they're making it. So we've got a thing happening this year, haven't we? Which is kind of big.
It's been quite a long time in preparation.
Yeah.
Recordation.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say any more than that.
You and I on this particular kind of side project, which is to create these amazing, mother of all templates first and foremost, but then kind of strip it back to various different iterations. We've got till October, so it's great. We've got a kind of firm date on it, which means we'll get it done.
Yeah.
But also, it's one of those great things that we can really think about, toy with. Play around with, use in anger. Both you from a mixed point of view, me from a compositional one.
We'll learn from our mistakes as well, which is great, because if we're going to hand this out to people, then it's got to be right.
But also, I think to kind of invite the community who kind of may have, because this is kind of quite advanced kind of logic use that we're doing first, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, there's things that I spend far too much of my time in Pro Tools, so anything I can learn from logic users to how to make it work similar to Pro Tools, then great.
Great, fantastic. Because these are basically delivery stems, aren't they?
Yeah.
We're looking at. So and that's about as broad as you would get, isn't it?
Okay. I mean, to be honest with you, if we yes, it is. If it's an orchestral based score, then it is. You might use that as being, synths, loops, choir, vocals or solos or that kind of stuff. I my basic template these days 10 stems.
Okay.
And I tend to fill it up just because I can with something else. But I mean, I often.
So
do
this is
6.
10, including
this is 9 actually, but there's 5, which is nice. So it's fine.
Plus the
Plus the
final
mixes.
mixes.
Yeah. So I do 10 plus a final mix, but this is a nice amount, and it's about it being neat as well. There's no point doing it just for the sake of adding an extra one. So I think this is nice. So then we've got to now decide what we're going to be routing most often, and that's what should go near the top of the list. The fewest number of mouse moves.
Okay.
Should be what you're going to do the most often.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
I kind of get you. So this is in respect to
which number on. So this is like 11. So X is the first number. So like 31, 32, 33, 34. That's right. So you were talking about having that as the premix stem. See, I would question whether that should be the reverb stem. Because you're going to use you're going to do that more often.
Okay.
Because I mean, I'm always up for when you're banking through long lists of things. You want the thing you're going to go to the most often.
Yeah. Because
you're going to save yourself most time. I'm talking about saving a second every time you do this.
Yes, and this is the whole point of the, if you save a minute per cue, and there's 80 cues, it's an hour and a half.
It's an hour and a half sleep, which is 2 in the morning is worth doing. So I would say, I think that all the structure of this should come at the bottom.
Okay.
And the fun stuff
the
should come at the top. It's the
stuff you want to grab.
Yeah. Because you're going to be
this is more the unseen.
Exactly. It's behind the scenes. Done the first 4. We're now going to do the 5th one, the string. So all we're doing at the minute is nothing. If you guys open up the brass percussion one, as you can see at the moment, all we're doing is just adding in, making the routing. There's no plugins and stuff yet here. All I'm doing is just making it all blank. So we're going to start making a new stack. So we're going to now make our string one. So our string stem. So we need to add a new auxiliary channel strip for 4 of these. So these 4 are the what we called the premix stems. So this will be the strings long, strings short, pizz, carlenio, stroke 1, and the effects harmonic. So here these are, and we're going to label these 05, 01, string long, 05, 02, string string short, 0503, string hits Cosenios, 0504 FX. That'll be fine, won't it? We know that that's the minute we won't do the output, we'll just do the input because this is just the neat the way the stacks work. So this is going to be come to our list, so that's 56 as per our list along. If we now add our reverbs to those, our sends, effect sends. So what we need to do to start making this easier, if we then, to make a track stack, these have to be tracks, so you have to create a track for them. We have two options, the folder stack, which is just a basic track that lets you mute, solo, and control the volume. So that's nice. Or the summing stack, which is really nice, that also mixes the subtracks and can be saved as a patch. So that's what Andy showed you a bit more about that on that thing. So create that. And now what that does very neatly now is if you now go and look at this, not there, but if you now select this, you can now see they've all put it in a very nice little stack, all of them all together, all there, very neat and tidy, so you can very access them. And now, in the right order, put this now to be number 50, which is our bus for the strings, for our string stem. And now if we now all select these and make the output of those, and there's all of our things. Brilliant. In a nice little beautiful, in a nice thing. What's slightly annoying is that our key stem goes over the, doesn't give you all of the 30 inside that, so you have to go to here to get the rest of those, which is slightly frustrating, but that's Logic doing its thing, and I guess it will have the same with 60 at the same time. But you get the gist. Great. It's very rather nice. And what's lovely about this is, so you make a track. Here's our instrument track. This is just a random Orbis track I've got. So you can see if we now want to move it into one of those, say we now, okay, well, this is a wind, so we put it into our wind. There we go. Drag it into the wind. So you drag it in, and now gives it the right output. And this is a wind. I guess this is a wind misc, isn't it? So we put it into wind misc. So we now change the output here to wind misc. It now comes up the wind. It's still coming out the output. You've got separate volume control over there for the master of that, and then you can now set our reverbs and effects here.
Amazing.
So you can, so it's really rather handy.
So we've got the curry.
Check.
Anything else we want to say about
Project.
Yeah.
Long.
Yeah, long.
Big.
Long form. Cool. It's about actually people having a universal starting point so that people can actually discuss and improve, which is what we're starting it by putting it on Dropbox, and we're going to kind of tinker.
Yeah, exactly, because
there's things like score preferences that you're not, exactly all that kind of stuff.
But you can take it and we'll make it modular hopefully and that kind of stuff, so you can do stuff. It's an interesting way. It's an interesting way of thinking about it. It takes a little bit more thought.
Yeah.
Particularly, it's like what is more important? Is it the mix? But it doesn't matter. We can tweak it, so it's good.
Brilliant.
We've got to the bottom of this routing stage. I've learned a bit of stuff. It's always good to do this and learn how these things work and what shortcuts you can save. And so we now have here a really nice version of the template that is no material in it at all. No. It's purely a routing only. There's no plugins in it. 9 stems. It's got each of those stems has got 5 effects.
Excellent.
It's got 4 sub-mixes for your, which is great. It's a really great template, to be honest with you. So it's great. And we've also just added, you wanted to have the extra print track so that you can press record all in one go and all these things get printed. And
yes, and you were quite satisfied with the way the stacks interact.
Yeah, the stacks. It said a summing stack, which to me meant, of course, I thought it would actually create like an extra track for it. Well, it looked like it was making a recording track, but it doesn't. It just actually makes like a kind of overall track, and it does actually set them down to a bus. So I'm gonna. My next iteration, when I have more time, the next time we come together, is to actually look at other ways of utilising this. So this is not finished yet. This is me still understanding it, and I really want to go away and interested to actually see what that actually entails, because I think there's some more clever things we can do here about how we can do busing and stuff, which is interesting. So it's cool. I've got a cunning little plan that might even work, which would be really kind of great about getting 2 mixes, because obviously with Logic it's difficult to get more than 1 mix. So to have with them, we talk about having our mix and our excited mix or mastered mix.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. So at the minute we've only got the 1 stereo output to put our end material on. So I'm working that out. But so each of our stems, let's just have a quick look at here. So for a wind stem, for example, gives you the master here. You've got the each of the reverb stems on the pre-mix if you want it. Here there are empty FX tracks, and so that goes through. the 9 stems, and then here we have our print tracks here, and they have the 5 things. So the top one, the 100, is the is the stem, and then you've got the premix tracks. These might well still be labelled up. This is just me getting through it, and then so you can click on record here, and they all bang in record.
Lovely.
And you stick it in record, and you can select them all at once. You can select all these at once.
So that's actually just without seeing them, that is activating what's inside them.
Indeed.
Cool.
Yeah, which is really nice.
Yeah.
Really, really nice way of doing it. And you can press record, and it will just off. It fires out all your audio. So it's great. There's still some investigation to do, but it's a great day to. If it's 5:30, it's time to walk the dogs and
walk the dogs and go to the pub.
So it's a great end to the day.
Fantastic. If you've kind of an expert at Logic and feel that there's anything that you could suggest for us to look into, please leave them in the comments below. I know that Jake and I would be very eager to see what your...
There's definitely some things. Hopefully by the time you've commented, we would have, I hope already, you'll be like, oh, and re-change it. But I've made some mistakes, I'm sure, so it'd be good to, and awesome shortcuts, it'd be great.
Brilliant stuff. Subscribe if you haven't done yet, because we'll be doing this as a kind of an iterative process. Ding that bell if you want to be notified the next time we put up a video. And one of them for Jake's handiwork. See you next time.
Cheers.
Just a little intro. That's a nice look.